Welcome back to the Boston Sports Summit. That is right. I am your host, Tim Barnett. This is the Boston Sports Summit presented by the Grid Network. It's so good to be back. I've had a very extended and kind of awkward vacation, I will say. But it's football season. That means we have the Patriots, baby. They're playing. They're 1-1. All right, we're going to talk about that in just a minute. Plus, we got to talk about the Red Sox and just how badly they have fallen. It has not been pretty and not something that I was expecting. And there's a lot that we didn't expect on top of Craig Breslow saying some things that, does he sound good? No. Is he right? No, because it only makes the team look worse. But the Celtics and Wyc Grousbeck, the New York Post came out with an article last week talking about how it is the family trying to sell the team. Wyc obviously doesn't want it because, let's face it, he's a Celtic. He loves the Celtics. He wants to own the team for the rest of his life. But, of course, his father has different plans. And then, to top it off, Don Sweeny and Jeremy Swayman are going at it head-to-head. There's a lot going at it. Now, I would say both sides are wrong. I would say both sides are wrong in this situation. Don Sweeny obviously has a shaky track record. But Swayman, what has he done? Outside of that playoff performance he had last year, I'm not taking anything away from that. But he hasn't been the guy for an entire season plus playoffs. So is he asking for too much money? We'll talk about that in about a half hour. So first and foremost, got to talk about the Pats. It's football season, baby. It's all about the Patriots right now. They surprised me. I'm going to admit, they surprised me. I was expecting this team to look eerily similar to what Carolina has looked like so far. Even with Jacoby Brissett as the starter. The O-line, I will say, has done not a great job, but enough to get it done. Because if you look at what this team has looked like, right, against Cincinnati, the team itself allowed less than 20 points. They had more than 120 rush yards, 0 turnovers, a +1 turnover margin, and the possession time was greater than or equal to 30 minutes. In the franchise's history, they're 41-0 all time when that happens. And Cincinnati proved exactly that. They dominated the run game, even though that Ramondre Stevenson, before contact, could barely get a yard. He was still ran for, 120 yards? Like, he was on fire against Cincinnati. And that's just team strength. This team strength is the run game. And not for nothing, even against Cincinnati, it was a little bit, but it was enough to show glimpses. I thought Antonio Gibson looked pretty good. I wasn't expecting much out of him either, but he looked pretty good. And so they played Seattle on Sunday. And that was, I think, the game to define the Patriots season. And I'm not saying that they're going to lose every single game from here on out. I'm not saying they're going to look like Carolina. But what I mean by it defined this Patriots team, this Patriots season, is the fact that they have such little margin for error. They have such little margin for error because against the Seahawks, they had a greater time possession than Seattle. They also had 0 turnovers. They had greater than or equal to 300 total yards. They had more than 150 rush yards, and they had less than 3 penalties. 153 teams have qualified since 1983 with that exact stat line. And shout out to Boston Sports Info, or otherwise on Twitter, Boston Sports Inf, for this because I thought this was unbelievable. 153 teams have qualified with that exact thing. time possession greater than their opponent, 0 turnovers, greater than or equal to 300 yards, greater than or equal to 150 rush yards, and less than or equal to 3 penalties. 153 teams since 1983. Before Sunday's game against Seattle, the teams that had that stat line went 152-0. After the game against Seattle, it's 152-1. The margin for error is so slim with this team that even when you do everything right, you can still lose the game. That's why this team, I'm totally in favor of waiting for Drake May. And the scary thing is, I don't know if we're going to be able to wait for Drake May because Jacoby Brissett has been slow to get up at least 4 times between Cincinnati and Seattle. If he keeps getting beat up like this, is he going to be able to make it through the season? I don't know. And the other thing that I want to bring up too is that the Patriots, the 2024 Patriots, are one of only 4 teams in the Super Bowl era to have less than or equal to 125 pass yards and greater than or equal to 170 rush yards through 2 games. The 75 Bills, the 78 Chiefs, the 79 Bears, and now not through 2 games, through 1 game, the 2024 Patriots. The brand of football this team is putting out onto the field every Sunday. It's a brand of football that I think most of the NFL audience has never seen before in their life, including yours truly. Okay? I have never seen this brand of football ever. Also, the receiving, it's just stat on stat on stat because of just how insane, in a good way. Like, I'm not saying this is bad. I'm just saying it's a whole different style, a whole different brand of football that the majority of the NFL audience has not seen. Because through 2 games over the last 10 years, the Patriots wide receivers have the fewest receiving yards of any team during that span. In other words, out of 320 teams that have been playing since 10 years ago, 2015, to now, through the first 2 games of the year, the Patriots wide receivers ranked 320th with 85 receiving yards, whereas the 319th team is the 2017 Baltimore Ravens, who had 107 yards through 2 games. Just the receivers only. No tight ends, no running backs. So you're kind of sitting there going, what's going on with this team? Is this sustainable? And I'm not sure, because Ramondre Stevenson is projected to have 434 touches all season. Christian McCaffrey last year had 393. And look how he's doing right now. He's not feeling too hot. Just got placed on IR. So this team has very little margin for error. You know, and listen, I'm not trying to bash this team. I'm not. Because everything that I've seen from the last 2 games have been wicked exciting. I have been enthralled at the edge of my seat every second of every game. And like I said at the start of the show, I thought that we were going to look like the Carolina Panthers, especially after the preseason and the Philly preseason game, which was insane. The offensive line couldn't get their act together. The joint practices, the O-line was horrendous. And then the very first play, the ball hadn't even been snapped yet, hadn't even been kicked yet. The very first play, one of our guys jumps early on the opening kickoff against Cincinnati to start the NFL season, and we already have a penalty. So, of course, I don't know about you, but I'm sitting there just laughing my ass off going, of course. Of course, this is how we start our season, and it's just only going to spiral from there. Surprisingly, it didn't. This team comes, they compete every Sunday, and the funny part is all these games, I can see us being in almost every game. And now with McCaffrey and Samuel out, I don't know, maybe we can compete against San Fran next week. I could be totally wrong on that, but something might change. We could be in it. We're still probably going to lose, but we could be in it because this team is coming out with a different type of energy that I haven't seen in this team in at least 4 to 5 years. The whole Mac Jones era, yeah, they were winning games his rookie year, but were they really, invested? Were they really playing, I don't want to say hard because it makes it sound like they don't play hard, but this team looks different. This team looks different, and I like it. But with what happened on Sunday, you can't make mistakes at halftime or going into the half. You elect to punt the ball to give Seattle one more opportunity to march down the field. And instead of going into the half down 1, they marched down the field, kicked a field goal, and now we're up 4 and get the ball to start the second half. Now, luckily, you forced them to turn it over on downs, but they were at your 23-yard line. They were that close to a double score. They could have gotten 6 points on the double score right there. So you would have been down 7 with your first possession in the second half, which could have changed everything. But then your defense stood up. They were stupid enough to go for it, but then your defense stood up. Not to mention, you have the ball at Seattle's 25-yard line. It's 1st and 10. 6 minutes are left with a running clock. And tell me if you heard this before. But what you do nothing with that. You go 1, 2, 3, elect to kick a field goal, and you get the kick blocked. You can't do that. You have to make sure that you are going to score. You are moving the ball on this team. You have the time of possession. You have the total yards. You're making your way. But then you stall like that. Not to mention Austin Hooper letting that guy just blow right by him to block the kick. Dude, what are you doing? What are you doing? I understand you're a tight end. But you know what? Part of that means you got to block. You got to learn how to block. And if you don't know how to block by now, then what the hell are you doing at all? Honestly. So, again, little things like that affect the outcome of these games. And it's not like, okay, Seattle marched down, they kicked the field goal, they tied it up, you get the ball back with, I think it was a little under 2 minutes, something like that. It's not like you have Tom Brady, Patrick Mahomes, Peyton Manning, Aaron Rodgers for that matter. I mean, not this Aaron Rodgers, but the Aaron Rodgers of earlier, where you can feel confident knowing that you're going to get into field goal range to set up for a go-ahead kick to win the game, right? But with Jacoby Brissett at the helm and your team so dependent on the run game like we are, I mean, you're not going to do that. You're not going to be able to move the ball in under 2 minutes when our wide receivers can only get 85 yards through 2 games. Our wide receivers in this game had 3 receptions for 19 yards and a touchdown. 2 of those receptions came from Jalen Polk, and he was the one that got the touchdown. Now, shout out to Jalen Polk. Pumped to see you in your second game get a touchdown. That's great. But, I mean, come on. Like, that's not good enough. I understand we're not targeting Pop Douglas. That's got to change. But, again, even talking about Pop Douglas, it's stuff like that where Jacoby's got to be better. There was a 1st and 10. I'm trying to remember the exact drive, but that first down to Hunter Henry where Jacoby Brissett was being chased, being pressured, and he's running around like a maniac, and all of a sudden he just somehow finds Hunter Henry, who's coming back, makes a sliding catch, is able to get up and basically dive forward for a first down. None of that had to happen because if you remember on that play, Pop Douglas is going from right to left, and he has about, he's about 3 yards behind the line of scrimmage, and he's got about 6 yards wide open with a DB coming across the field to cover him. But again, that's at least 6 yards of open space where this guy is shifty as hell. And you're telling me that Brissett was so focused on running around that he just didn't look to his left and just go, like, come on, man. Like, be better than that. You got to understand. And with this team going forward, there's a lot you have to take into account because when it comes to the offense, the Boston Sports Journal put out some stats that I found pretty interesting because, again, we're so reliant on the run game that our pass play or play action pass percentage is low, is so low. We're 22nd in the league for play action percentage at 18.2%. If you're going to run the ball as much as we are, then why aren't you like that's the whole point of the play action is you run. You bring everybody into the box. You force the safeties to cheat down. And then all of a sudden you turn around, you fake the ball, you take it, and you drop back. And all of a sudden the safeties, they're cheating down, which leaves you guys going long and they're wide open, if not one-on-one coverage. Why are we 22nd in play action pass? Now, if you want to say you don't trust your offensive line or you don't trust Jacoby Brissett, I don't blame you. Because our offensive line has looked like trash when it comes to pressure, time to pressure, right? And Boston Sports Journal put it out that time to pressure against this offense, it's 2.48 seconds, which is the 6th fastest in the league, which means Jacoby Brissett has 2.48 seconds before he's pressured. Not sacked, but pressured. That's where everything's got to hurry up and you're running for your life. Meanwhile, the blitz percentage against this team is 23rd because that's how bad this O-line is. You can rush 3, you can rush 4, and you're probably going to get a pressure, let alone get home. And I think on the first drive of the game, I want to say it was 3rd down, where Jacoby drops back. It's a 4-man pressure. He's rolling to his right. And you have the young buck, who's a big fan of his, like Mafe. He was a stud for Seattle. But he's coming on Jacoby's left. And Darian Lowe was holding him pretty good. But then you have rookie Michael Jordan coming to assist. And the funny part was, Lowe and Mafe are squared up on one another, right? Like, I think he's trying to get around, but can't necessarily. And all of a sudden, Michael Jordan comes over and just, bam, shoves him, Mafe, about 2 yards to Lowe's left, which all of a sudden opens up a direct lane to Jacoby Brissett. And that's how he got the sack. Like, it's little things like that you have to look at and be understandable. I don't know if we can trust this offensive line to allow Jacoby Brissett to get through the season. That's what's scaring me. And not to mention, you talk about injuries. Let's look at our defense. Jawan Bentley. Now, this dude's a stud. He's a very underrated linebacker in the league because he puts up all the classic linebacker stats, over 100 tackles in 3 straight seasons, on pace to do the same. But now all of a sudden, he went out of the game on Sunday injured. And after the game, if not on Monday, they were saying, hey, everything's looking good. It looks like he's going to be ready to go on Thursday night against the Jets. Well, Tuesday, it turns out the dude's got a torn pec. Right here. Torn pectoral muscle. How do you figure that? How can, as a doctor, as an athletic trainer, how can you look at this guy and say, he's injured. He's not feeling too hot. But you know what? Everything checks out. Everything looks good. He'll be ready to go by Thursday, 4 days after a game. And it turns out he's got a torn pectoral muscle. Explain how that makes sense. And I'm not calling for a malpractice, but I'm just, thank God the dude didn't play. But I'm like, I've read those two, and I'm like, how does that happen? How are you that just lost, at a loss for words? And now, the only guy that I feel like we can solely rely on this team, on this defense, is Keon White. Keon White has been a stud. He got another sack and a half on Sunday. I think his total is up to 4 now? Through 2 games, he already got 4 sacks. And everyone wants to talk about, Christian Gonzalez this, Christian Gonzalez that. Before you get mad at me, let's pump the brakes here, because DK Metcalf and Jackson Smith and Jigba had 22 catches combined against us. Not to mention the total breakdown in coverage that was DK Metcalf's, 50, 60 plus yard touchdown there to tie the game at 7. And listen, I know Jabril Peppers was the one, was it Peppers or Duggar? I think it was Peppers. Or Duggar. No, excuse me. It was Duggar. Where he's like, hey, that was on me. I called the zero blitz. We didn't, miscommunication. That's why Christian Gonzalez didn't do what he was supposed to do. Which, I get it. But I'm sorry. I feel like that's a cop-out. I feel like that's a freaking cop-out. To save this kid's ass. And I saw on PFF, of the 130, plus DBs or corners that have played through 2 weeks, Christian Gonzalez ranked 73rd. According to PFF. And listen, while there might be some, truth to that, or it might be some, there might be some a little bit, I don't know if it's 100% true. Listen, there is some truth to that. There is. And I'm not sitting here trying to say that Christian Gonzalez sucks. But I think we're jumping the gun a little bit on the hype. I think we're jumping the gun on the hype where, we were ready to call this dude ready. We were calling this dude Darrelle Revis. We were saying he was the lockdown corner that this team needs. He's the shutdown. He's Gilmore. He's Revis. He's, Deion Sanders. Like, he's all the greatest DBs in NFL history wrapped into one. Like, guys, can we please stop it? You know better. Okay? Like, listen, I want to be as hyped as you. But you have to have some objectiveness of some reality while you're watching these games. Do you really think that if DK Metcalf is torching us, right? He's torching us. He's got 5 catches, over 100 yards, and we're still going out there playing zone, that you don't think DeMarcus Covington, if Christian Gonzalez is the dude that we're all saying that he is, you don't think that DeMarcus Covington is going to say to Gonzalez, hey, screw the rest of the defense. Don't focus on that. Just stay on Metcalf. Do not let him out of your sight. You have him one-on-one. You really think that he wouldn't have said that? Because he would have. If Gonzalez was that dude that we're all hoping or thinking that he is, and Metcalf's burning us, that's the whole point of a lockdown, shutdown corner, is to take away your best receiver. And because Gonzalez didn't do that, he played with the rest of the team defense, I should say. Sorry, I'm just not buying into the hype right now. Now listen, his game against Cincinnati was good, but I also attribute that to the fact that Jamar Chase only had, a week of practice, if that, because he was doing a holdout. Like, it's crazy to me. It's crazy to me. So listen, I get it. I want him to be the next Darrelle Revis. I want him to, make sure that not a single receiver is going to make a single catch on him ever. I would love that. But let's pump the brakes. Let's let him show us that he's going to do that and repeat what he did last season against the top receivers. And once he does that, cool. Then we'll start calling him that. And I'm totally here for it. But it's going to be interesting to see how this team plays on Thursday night against the Jets. The Jets have a good team on paper. On paper, they got a very good team. The only thing that scares me about them is their run defense improved against Tennessee. The only big runs that came against them were from Will Levis. And if Aaron Rodgers can somehow, found the connection that he needs, I think we're in for a long, long night, in New York. Because if that defense has improved, I'm a little leery of our offense being able to move the ball at all. At all. So, I don't know. Sauce Gardner, Quentin Williams on offense, Aaron Rodgers, Breece Hall, Garrett Wilson. They got some guys. On paper, they got some guys. It's just a matter of, can they put it all together? Now, the next thing I want to talk about is the Robert Kraft article that came out on ESPN. I don't know if you guys saw this. Winners Write History inside Robert Kraft's 12-year Hall of Fame quest. Now, first and foremost, I want to say about his Hall of Fame candidacy, the fact that he's not in is crazy to me. It's absolutely crazy that Robert Kraft's not in the Hall of Fame. Just want to get that out there first and foremost. Because here's the thing. Should he be in? Yes. Am I mad, though, that he's not? No. Sorry. I'm really not. Because, listen, if Tom Brady and or Bill Belichick don't get in the Hall of Fame on the first ballot and aren't unanimous, regardless of the checkered past, then yes, then I'll be pissed. Because both those guys, regardless of the Deflategate or Spygate, should 1000% be in the Hall of Fame. No questions asked. First ballot, unanimous. It's that simple. But with Robert Kraft, I feel like he wants to take credit for things that aren't necessarily for the owner to take credit for. If you know what I mean, because going through the article overall, like I thought that this article was kind of like a last-ditch effort for him to make his case. Because even though, yes, it points out a bunch of his flaws, which I will say, it points it out, but it's not like Kraft is admitting to his flaws. So that's kind of a big one right there, because Stacey James, the PR person for Kraft and the Patriots, categorically denied some of the accusations that fans, myself, former players have made, especially for situations like the Apple dynasty. So, and I'll get to that in about 5 minutes. But yes, even though it points out some of the things that he's done, I could kind of see this article and the way it was written, the way it was phrased, and certain points of it, where it was kind of calling out the voting committee on a few things. Like, number one, calling them out for, hey, look at what I've done. I saved the New England Patriots by buying them from Orthwein back in '94, who was ready to move them to St. Louis, which would have been an effing travesty, at least for myself. But in the rest of New England. But, he did that. They went to the Super Bowl his second year as an owner. He hired Bill Belichick. They got Tom Brady in the 6th round. The rest, as you can say, is history. But Robert Kraft also was big on bringing Roger Goodell in as the commissioner. He was big on ending the 2011 lockout. He did some good things with the media and marketing for the league. So the dude has done a lot. And he's not just one of these owners that is sitting by, collecting a paycheck, like you could argue a bunch of the sons of owners have done in the NFL. They don't care. They're like, hey, you know what? We've owned this team since the beginning. I don't care. We're done, right? So like he's done a lot of good, a lot that deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. Okay. And the other thing too, that I think this article kind of points out, whether knowingly or unknowingly, is the fact that look at all these contributors, look at all these coaches, these contributors, they get in when they're dead for the most part. Like, for instance, I want to say Don Coryell. Don Coryell, the guy who invented Air Coryell, which made Dan Fouts a Hall of Famer, which I don't believe he is. But, he just got inducted, last year, 2 years ago? And he passed on. They inducted a bunch of owners, recently, one of which, Pat Bowlen, they inducted, who's the owner of the Broncos, which I'm still trying to figure out why Pat Bowlen, the Broncos owner, got inducted. But part of the article was arguing that he got inducted because of because of he had Alzheimer's disease and sadly passed away 2 months before the bust was revealed. But even still, I'm sorry, why was he inducted? And the funny part was, again, let's look at the Patriots dynasty, right? Bill Belichick, Tom Brady, Robert Kraft, 3 guys instrumental to the dynasty, each for different reasons. Everything that happened on the field was Bill and Tom. No two ways about it. But the article points out something that I found to be interesting, because it says the Pats dynasty is in the spotlight. There are displays featuring Brady's game jerseys, Belichick's hoodie, footballs from famous moments, you name it. So it got me wondering, when it comes to the Hall of Fame and the Hall of Fame voting, and I'm not just talking about Robert Kraft right now, I'm going kind of a side note, but the Patriots dynasty is for all to see. But when you look at who are the true Patriots from that dynasty era that are in the Hall of Fame, there's only two. Yeah, it's Ty Law and Richard Seymour. And yes, they went and played for different teams, but they are true Patriots. Whereas there are three guys in the Hall of Fame that are technically under the Patriot name and were part of the dynasty, i.e. Randy Moss, Junior Seau, and Darrelle Revis. They're also in the Hall of Fame, but let's face it, Randy Moss is a Viking, Darrelle Revis is a Jet, and Junior Seau is a Charger. That's why I almost kind of wish all Hall of Fames, you had to go under like one specific team like baseball does. It's one of the very few things baseball gets right. But we only have two. And of course, down the line, we'll have probably Belichick, Brady, I would assume Gronkowski. So that makes it 5. And then if you want to add Kraft, if and when he gets in, it'll be 6. But I wanted to look at the previous dynasties, the ones that we all talk about, right? The 70s Steelers, the 80s Niners, the 90s Cowboys. And when you look at it, the Steelers had 12, the Niners had 8, and the 90s Cowboys had 6. But if you look at the 70s Cowboys dynasty, which won a couple championships as well, they had 10 people. And when I looked at the 90s Cowboys and the 80s Niners, right? Part of what I did was, for guys who played for both, actually, like Charles Haley, right? Charles Haley, I put as a Niner because he was drafted in 86 to the Niners, played till 91, and then played from 98 and 99 his last 2 years. But when you look at the 90s Cowboys, you could argue maybe 7 because I left Deion Sanders off the list, even though he spent a hell of a lot more time in Dallas than he did in San Fran, but he also spent a bulk of his career in Atlanta. So, again, there are plus or minus a couple if you want, but I was trying to look at true Niners, true Cowboys, true Steelers, who are part of those dynasties. And it's crazy to me that throughout the years, the old timers, everybody got in. But as the dynasties have gotten newer and newer and newer, you have less and less players. And I'm sorry, that's ridiculous. You're telling me that Willie McGinnis doesn't deserve to be in the Hall of Fame, even though he is the all-time sack leader in the playoffs? You want to tell me that Julian Edelman, and you can make an argument for him because it's his regular season versus postseason are two wildly different things, but the dude was the definition of clutch in the postseason, second in receiving yards behind Jerry Rice in the postseason. It's crazy to me. And listen, and Rodney Harrison, I think the only defensive back to ever have 30 picks and 30 sacks. Why the hell isn't he in the Hall of Fame? Vince Wilfork, the guy doesn't put up stats, but by God, did he affect every single game that he played in. Stuff in the line. He wasn't, a stat king, but I promise you, that dude is a Hall of Fame D tackle, end of story. There are so many guys from the Patriots dynasty that deserve to be in the Hall of Fame that aren't. And if it really only becomes 5 five guys in terms of Bill, Brady, and Gronk after Lawrence Seymour, then the NFL has to get their head on straight. Or not the NFL, but Canton, the Pro Football Hall of Fame has to get their head on straight, because that's just stupid. The greatest dynasty in NFL history, and you only have five guys, including the coach, to make it into the Hall of Fame. Like, get out of my face with that. So, just something to think about. But getting back to Kraft, I mean, the voting is so interesting, because it starts off with a subcommittee of 12 guys who then advance the person to the full voting, which is 50 guys, and you need 40 votes to be able to be elected into the Hall of Fame. Now, everything is confidential, and that's where I wish it was more like the BWAA, whereas every single vote that every single BWAA member makes for the Hall of Fame, and people will applaud or scrutinize for it. Most recently scrutinized, but you know what? Rightfully so. And then just the last thing I wanted to talk about was, with Kraft and his bid in this article, was the book and docuseries. Again, we were right. I was right. And listen, it's good to be right. But when you're making assumptions, hey, you never know. But at the end of the day, Kraft wanted control. He wanted total control. And part of the article was saying that Robert Kraft had an underappreciated role in the dynasty. While Robert publicly will say that he's mostly uninvolved with football matters, but the dynasty book shows that the owner very much is involved and now wants credit. Like, that's the thing that bothers me more than anything, because even early on, when he talks about Jerry Jones getting in, he makes the point to be like, Jerry Jones hasn't been in an NFC title game in 2 decades. Why does he get in? This is back in 2016. And that's where I'm like, that's where I sit there and I remember that being an owner is very different. You have different qualifications. You have different standards on what makes you a Hall of Famer, right? And so now with Jerry Jones, obviously it is a little different because the dude is the GM. I don't remember when he took over, player personnel, but he's obviously made football decisions. And listen, he's owned up to it. So that's one of the things I love about Jerry is that, listen, while the dude's he's crazy to some degree, he also owns up for every decision the Cowboys make. Like he was talking the whole time about, don't worry, Dak and CD are going to get their contracts. It'll get done. And then what happened? Right before week 1, contracts got done. And all the bad decisions that, he's made, all the good decisions he's made, the dude's worn it every single battle. Every single, swipe at him, he goes, yep, that was me. Yep, I did that. Yep, I didn't want him anymore. So that's one of the things I do love about Jerry is that it's like he's open. He tells you how it is. Whereas Kraft wants to hide behind the scenes. The dude is like, no. I had no football decisions. I was not part of, player personnel. I was not a part of this, not a part of that. And yet, this article blatantly says that he was underappreciated and that he was very much involved in football decisions and now wants credit for it. That's what the docuseries and the Dynasty book were all about, which is insane to me. He wasn't underappreciated. When I was growing up, living the Dynasty day by day, remembering every single game, every single move, transaction, you name it. The thing that bothers me is that I loved Robert Kraft. I thought he was a great owner. I thought he was doing everything that he should have done. And then to help out the league and do what he did for the league, hugging Jeff Saturday when they got the lockout squared away. I was like, there it is. There it is. Robert Kraft just saved the 2011 NFL season because him and Jeff Saturday, the player representative at the time, were able to hammer out a deal. And yet, he thinks he's underappreciated. Like, no, you weren't. You did your job, Robert. Belichick would say, you did your job as an owner. You kept your mouth shut. You paid the guys. You did everything right. You kept the seasons going. You made sure that Belichick and Brady, weren't splitting up anytime soon. We'll talk about that, later. But, you know what I'm trying to say. Like, that's what bothers me. It's like, Robert, just because the team won 6 Super Bowls doesn't mean that you were the guy calling the shots. If you were the general manager and you picked the players, you did sign the contracts, but you weren't negotiating. That was Belichick. Like, if you were doing that, then yeah, I would give you more credit. But as the owner, you did your job. Sorry if you don't like that, but that's how it is. Owners aren't measured, or they're measured a little bit on the success of the organization, on the success of the team, winning 6 rings, going to, 10 or 9 straight AFC title games, having a 20-year dynasty with a coach and quarterback, one of each. I mean, of course you should. But then to sit here and say that you were underappreciated, or at least the article say that, I am putting words in your mouth, but the article says it, so that means you said it. And then the article goes on to talk about how you wanted total control over editorial control of the docuseries. Just to have the first guy tell you no, and deal falls through, only to have the guy who actually produced and directed the docuseries. Oh, I don't know. He's a close friend of yours. Do the math. The producers are close. The director's a close friend of Robert Kraft. And it's Kraft LLC 2024 on the docuseries. You don't think that Robert Kraft had editorial control on how that docuseries navigated all the events of the 20-year dynasty, skipping over 03 and 04, skipping over the 21-game win streak, and then for you to come out and be like, oh, well, I was very disappointed because, I can't believe they skipped over several of those key moments in our history. Dude, you picked that. Spare me the nonsense. And then to sit there and say that with Drew Bledsoe going down, Tom Brady coming in, and Belichick sticking with Brady, that Belichick was going to get fired that year if you didn't make the playoffs and or win the Super Bowl. Like, get out of my face with that. There was zero chance in hell that Belichick was going to get fired year 2, mind you, year 2, because the star quarterback goes down and Belichick sticks with Brady, the backup, not Bledsoe, the $100 million man. So basically, this article was wild to read. A lot of good tidbits, but just a lot of things where you're sitting there going, what is going on? What is Robert Kraft thinking? Why is he trying to, make this case? And while, listen, I agree, Robert should be in the Hall of Fame. It's just, it really got, in my opinion, way overblown. And Robert just doing way too much. And I think that this, one, calls out the voting committee. And 2, it's kind of a little pity party for Robert to say, hey, you keep missing the opportunity to add me to the Hall of Fame. I should be in the Hall of Fame. Now I think it'll be easier for Robert because they did split up the coaches and the owners. Oh, and by the way, I just want to say this: within the last 4 years, part of the people to get into the Hall of Fame, one of which was a referee. So, seeing that a ref get in the Hall of Fame, yeah, Robert Kraft should be in this 2025 class. And if he isn't, then I don't think there's any hope. No hope. But moving on to the Boston Red Sox and their just demise, absolute demise since the All-Star break. This team has fallen under 500 for the first time since June 11th after getting smoked by the Tampa Bay Rays last night. And kind of all because Tyler O'Neill dived for a ball, had no business diving for. The ball bounces over his head, and it totally clears the bases. Makes an 8-3 ball game. Like, just stupid. Stupid. I don't know what happened. Now, of course, this team was hitting out of their shoes. They started off the year pitching out of their shoes and hitting out of their shoes. And then just after the All-Star break, just dead. Nothing. And have been 22-33 since the All-Star break. Third worst in Major League Baseball. And the sad part is, all season, this team has racked up the most strikeouts in team history with over 1,400. Meanwhile, the 2021 Red Sox rivaled this with only 1,386 strikeouts. And not to mention, there are 11 more games remaining. So, hell, this team could rack up 1,500 strikeouts before the season ends. And because the reason why is because they still have 2 more games against the Rays tonight and tomorrow. They have 3 more against the Twins, which should have been the series that could propel you into the playoffs, right? That propels you into the wild card, because none of the wild card teams want that final wild card spot. They don't. You have the Twins, who are right up there in terms of losing as many games as you since the All-Star break. They don't want it. You have the Mariners, who are on the outside looking in, who try to steal home with 2 outs in the first inning, bases loaded, in a 3-0 count. And guess what? He got picked off. You moron. So the Mariners clearly are doing everything in their power not to win. Like, what is going on? And the worst part is, the Blue Jays, who have the worst record in the AL East, are only 3 games back of you. So you have 2 more against the Rays tonight. You have 3 against the Twins, 3 against the Blue Jays, and then 3 more to finish off the year against the Rays. With everything going the way it is, the Red Sox could be last again. They could fulfill my prediction, but do it in such a unbelievable way where they're right there. They're right in the wild card. They're right. They get your hopes up. Oh my God, August and September are coming. We're gonna have meaningful games that are gonna hopefully get us into the playoffs. Meanwhile, the other 2 teams are gonna suck, and it's just gonna be us trying to vie for that final, maybe second wild card spot. What's that old line Lonnie Clark had in Fever Pitch? Careful, kid. This team will break your heart. And the sad thing is, they didn't break my heart, but it's just wildly disappointing. Wildly disappointing that we got so close just to piss it all away. Because the bullpen since the All-Star break has allowed a 6.21 ERA, allowing a 7.3 runs per 9 innings, both of which worst in Major League Baseball. They have 15 blown saves since the All-Star break, which outdoes how many saves they have, which is 11. They have 11 saves and 15 blown saves. Not to mention allowing 41 home runs. Just crazy. Crazy. And this is what pisses me off, because you have a team that tried to sell you a bill of goods. I'm sorry, they did at the trade deadline. They're like, look at all the arms that we just acquired. We acquired Quinn Parker. We acquired Luis Garcia, who's 37. Like, we acquired all these guys, all these arms. That's going to help us, right? Don't worry, Red Sox fans. We're investing in this team. And what did I say on the trade deadline? What did I say on the trade deadline special? I said the fact that this team is getting all these arms doesn't necessarily mean that they're quality. I couldn't care less about getting 8 players at a trade deadline. If you give me 8 to average to below average players, then guess what? Your team is going to only get average to below average. But if you give me 2 above average star players, yeah, you know what? You're going to have to sell off a few pieces. But at the end of the day, it could be worth it. It could have helped your team. I mean, again, I will go back 2004. I was heartbroken when the Red Sox sold Nomar for Orlando Cabrera. Heartbroken. But you know what? We won. It helped. It was the right thing to do. So that's what bothers me, is that the GMs now, they're so afraid of selling off their young guys because, hey, don't worry, we're going to have young contract control players. I'll get to that line in just a quick minute, but that's our future. Look at our future. We have a bright future. Look at them. Look at them. 4 guys. What if 3 of them bust? What if all 4 are busts? Yes, Roman Anthony's the number 1 overall Red Sox prospect. Great. What if he doesn't pan out? Marcelo Myers got a bunch of injuries. What if he doesn't pan out? What if Christian Campbell? Who knows how that's going to play? Again, I like the youth. I do. But you're relying this team's success on 4 guys who have never seen major league pitching. Come on. You know how hard it is? You know the difference between major league and AAA pitching? It's kind of big. Just ask Bobby Dahlbeck, a AAA Hall of Famer who blows at the major league level. And I know you guys, for those of you who love Bobby Dahlbeck, sorry to burst your bubble. He had that one good, week or 2, maybe even a month. But that was it. He bottomed out real quick. And every single time they try to bring him back, he couldn't hit for 200 if his life depended on it. And so the reason, what I mentioned earlier that I was going to come back to is Craig Breslow in a recent interview stated, quote, when you have homegrown, cost-controlled talent, it enables you to be a little bit more aggressive in looking for elite major league talent. Dude, we've had homegrown, cost-controlled talent for the last 5 years. even 6 if you want to go back to 2018. And what did you do with it? You sold off a superstar in Mookie Betts. And then, okay, Benintendi burned out. Jackie Bradley was who we all thought he was. Like, we had guys that you and your owner, and I know Brezzo just got here. I'm not talking about him, but our owner sold off methodically with a bum GM who was just like, who was told, I don't care what you get for a deal, just make it. And that's how the Dodgers were able to take advantage of us. Giving us Alex Verdugo. That bum. Like, give me a break. So, again, just because you have cost control, homegrown talent doesn't mean crap. Because if it did, Mookie Betts would still be on this team. You're damn right he would be. Meanwhile, we got a frequent commenter, Sports Mom. Do you blame the manager to the terrible Red Sox record? No. I mean, sure. Were there some things that he did that I would, blame him for? Of course. The Sunday game against the White Sox, it was going into the 9th inning or the 8th inning, I should say. No, sorry, going into the 9th inning, and we didn't throw out Kenley Jansen. And the reason why we don't know, but if we didn't throw him out there because the dude wanted to have the save number just to help his free agency case, there was no possible way for him to get a save because we're going into the 9th inning, and the next time we're up to bat, it's a tie ball game. We're up to bat. If we score a run, the game's over. That means Kenley would get the win, not the save. So there are, some things that I think Alex Cora did, but at the same time, I look at what has transpired over the last 2 trade deadlines or 3 trade deadlines. Actually the one after the Kyle Schwarber deadline, let's put it that way. And the organization has done nothing. Kyan Bloom did nothing. He couldn't pull the friggin' trigger. And then Craig Breslow wants to go out there and say that, hey, look, I made all these moves. I helped better our team. Well, no, you didn't, because just because you add arms doesn't mean you're adding the right arms. We need guys that are above average to stars. We don't need guys that are average to below average, which is what they were. I made the mistake on the trade deadline special thinking that, we got Luis Garcia from Houston, who's a stud. He's 25. He's good. Yeah, he's got some injury history, but I'm pumped about it. No, we got the 37-year-old bum from the Angels. Like, how can you not sit there as the manager and be disheartened by that? And the last 2 years before this one, the trade deadline absolutely affected Alex Cora and the team, because Alex Cora was basically telling the team to, F the ownership and F the front office. And that's why the team sucked the second half of the year, the last 2 years. This year, I don't know if everything just caught up to them or if the arms that, we got, like I said, sucked. We stopped hitting. We couldn't do what we wanted to do. We fell back to some old habits. And it's so ridiculous. It really is ridiculous to see this Red Sox team give us all this hope just for them to tear us down in 2 months. I mean, it's literally the 2-month mark, right? July, August, September. Yeah. It's 2 months from today was the All-Star break. And how the mighty have fallen. Here we're expecting a team to compete, and then they just absolutely crap the bed. Unbelievable. And again, I give all the blame to the front office with a little bit on management, or the manager, I should say. but I'm more of a front office ownership blame guy, especially when they don't do anything they should be doing. But now moving on to another situation that is causing some mayhem over on Causeway Street. You have Don Sweeny and Jeremy Swayman butting heads. They're butting heads. That's what they're doing. Jeremy Swayman wants this massive contract. He wants to be up there with the top 5 goaltenders getting paid. And Don Sweeney's like, dude, 1, we can barely afford that. 2, you're not good enough yet. Now, again, I'm putting words in both sides' mouth, but that's kind of how it feels. And so Swayman, of course, has an agent who is known as a hot-ass a-hole because he was the one that, they couldn't come to an agreement with Torrey Krug. And then he went out to St. Louis and he got his bag, which, hey, Torrey, happy for you, kid. But unfortunately, he was very injury plagued and, now he's going to be out now. But with Swayman, as I see the picture, right? Swayman was never once the guy the entire year because it was always a platoon, but the platoon always started with Allmark. Then when Allmark got injured this past season, that's when the dynamics switched. But Swayman was, then had a hell of a performance in the playoffs. No two ways about it. But the thing about that was, again, you need to be the guy. If you're going to earn and get paid what you think you deserve, you have to then prove it. And so far, in my opinion, I don't think Swayman has proved it. I think he's done very well given the situation that he's been in. And yeah, there were times where, he's played more games. He played more games than Allmark and then stepped up and was lights out. Unfortunately, we had a team in front of him that couldn't score, not to mention a Florida Panther team that just threw cheap shots left and right and got away with murder practically. But that's a story for a different day. The thing about it is, I don't mind the negotiation, right? I don't mind it where the player goes out and gets the money, gets the bag, says, hey, this is what I'm paying, this is what I'm owed, pay me, and then if he doesn't get paid, he's gone, sure, good, go for it. Like, I got no problem with that. But then there were times where it's like I look at it and I go, like, what are you asking to get paid for? Why do you think you are owed all of this much money? I mean, a good example to cross sports, Jamar Chase. The dude still has 2 years left on his contract and is looking to get re-upped, looking to get the bag. I'm like, bro, you played 2 years. You still have 2 years left on your contract. What are you talking about? Next year, then go for it. I got no problem next year when you have 1 year left. But now, shut your mouth and play. And for Swayman, it's kind of the same thing. Now that he's not going to be reporting to camp, and Don Sweeny was pissed at the press conference today. God, was he mad. Because there were allegedly false reports that Sweeny didn't return Swayman's calls for 3 weeks. So that report got thrown out there, and this is the first press conference Don Sweeny has had. And so when that question came up, oh boy, was he mad. But dropping some bombs here and there. But no. The thing with Swayman that I'm mad at him for is go out and do it. Go out and be the guy. Be the number one guy. Play 50 games this year. And then, if we make the playoffs, which we should, we're a playoff contender, then go out and do what you did last year. If you do that, bam, Here's $10 million a year. Go for it, right? But on the other side, Sweeny is Sweeney's not at fault. Or, excuse me, Sweeny is not, God, what the hell am I trying to say? There is some blame should be thrown Sweeney's way. Okay? This isn't a knock on Swayman like 100%. He needs to shut his mouth, sign a cheap deal, and then move on. No. That's not what I'm saying. That's part of what I'm saying. The other part of what I'm trying to say is Don Sweeney needs to realize that he messed up. That by trading Linus Ullmark, he gave all the leverage to Jeremy Swayman. All the leverage. But in what? He thinks that, by doing that, he's showing a sign of good faith. I mean, I think that's what he was trying to insinuate. Between that, not going to arbitration, trying to show, hey, look, I want you to be our guy. Look, I'm getting rid of Linus Ullmark, who I know you love, but he's getting paid too much if you want the bag, right? So he screwed that up, and frequent commenter Not Doug also points that out as well. With Ullmark gone, Swayman has the leverage. Absolutely. So he screwed that up. And then last year, when they went to arbitration and Swayman, oh my God, talk about just insufferable. I wouldn't wish arbitration on my worst enemy. Blah, 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 blah. Dude, it's arbitration. What the hell is going on upstairs for you to think that you are having PTSD about, hey, I'm owed this number. The team comes back. No, we're going to pay you this number. And then the arbiter splits it right down the middle. What the hell is running through your head to say, I wouldn't wish arbitration on my worst enemy? Like, good God, man. Get it together. With that scares me. If the dude doesn't have the mental capacity to go through arbitration, is he going to be good enough to last an entire playoffs, an entire Stanley Cup playoffs, and win the cup? I mean, he looked great, last year. But be the man. Do it. So with that arbitration is what I'm trying to say. With that arbitration number, I think it came in, 3.5? Don Sweeney had the opportunity to make that a 2-year deal, not a 1-year deal. Instead, Don's like, hey, listen, I know arbitration was tough on you. So we're going to do a 1-year arbitration deal, in which case, we'll come back to the drawing table next season, and then we'll try to hammer something out. Instead of being like, no, 2 years, do it again, and then we'll come back to the table. So those are the two areas that really Sweeney messed up on. He could have saved himself some trouble by just picking the 2-year arbitration last year, or keeping Ullmark and trading Swayman. And you know what? I would love to know what are some of the offers that you could have gotten for Jeremy Swayman over Linus Ullmark. Because I sure as hell wasn't happy with the deal for Linus Ullmark. It was okay, but it wasn't great. I was looking for great. Former Vezina winner. Like, come on. It should have been great. So, overall, when I look at the Bruins and I look at like Sweeney's tenure, because he's coming up on 10 years. Sweeney's been the general manager for 10 years for this organization. And how has he done? Well, he's made a bunch of playoffs. I think he's got the most wins. He's tied for the most wins with Tampa, and he's got the most points. So, during his tenure, and he's got the 5th most wins in the playoffs. So, listen, Sweeney has built championship contenders. Now, the failure to get it done, that falls on the players and the coaching staff. But Sweeney's put his guys in position to win, especially when you go back to a couple of years ago when we got bounced in the first round, had the best record, all of that. He sold his soul for that team, getting Tyler Bertuzzi, Dmitry Orlov, Garnet Hathaway. I mean, he gave up a lot to get those guys, and I swear, had we gotten past the Panthers, it would have been worth it, and it was worth it. But those guys fell flat on their face. So when I look at John Sweeny and his tenure with the Bruins, coming up 10 years now, as much as I still hate his drafting, the pipeline is producing some potential NHLers. Matthew Patois, Mason Lowry, just to name a few. But overall, I'm looking at this dude. I'm giving him a B-. Main reason, we haven't won. And I understand. I just kind of laid out that winning's not necessarily on him, but it is. It is. The whole thing is based on winning. If you have the most points, you're tied for the most wins in the regular season, and you have the 5th most playoff wins during your tenure amongst the entire league, and you still haven't won a cup, let alone gotten to a second Eastern Conference Finals or a second Stanley Cup Finals. Yeah. He has to take some of the responsibility for that. So overall, Don Sweeney, B-. That's my grade for his tenure. But the last thing I want to discuss, and it's not going to take long, but it's definitely worth noting because the article came out last week talking about the dispute between father and son, Boston Celtics owner over team's massive payroll sparked sale, written by Josh Kosman and Brian Lewis of the New York Post. These guys brought up the fact that, of course, we all know, as Celtics fans, we should know, Wyc is the face of the team. He's the owner. He loves the Celtics with all his heart. This guy bleeds green. He will do whatever it takes. See the contracts they just signed, clearly to keep a championship team together to continue to win. Unfortunately, the team and all that money is bleeding into the inheritance of Wyc's siblings. And that's kind of where this whole thing comes about because, yes, does Wyc and his family have what it takes to pay a projected cost around $500 million for the 2025-26 season? Does the Grossbeck family have that kind of money? I don't know. I don't think so. But that's where this thing is kind of interesting to me because while everything is confirmed that, yes, Wyc doesn't want to sell the team, the father does. The interesting thing is, like the first line, the Boston Celtics ballooning payroll allegedly sparked a rift within the family that owns the team, leading to the aging patriarch to demand his free-spending son sell the iconic franchise. And that wasn't a rift between Wyc and his father. No, that's a rift between Wyc and his family, otherwise known as his siblings, because one of the sources in this article, it says, one of the sources in this article on the front page, quote, "That's what happens when dad puts in most of the money." Not, that's what happens when Irv puts in most of the money. That's not what happens when the father puts in most of the money. No, this source called Irving Grossbeck dad. That's what happens when dad puts in most of the money, quote unquote. Now tell me, do you think any self-respecting journalist, I don't care if they are TMZ or for the Wall Street Journal, do you think that if this source wasn't connected to the family, that wasn't related to the family, do you think that they would put in, quote, what happens when dad puts in most of the money? Like, Dad, I want some of that money. That's what this is. That's what this source is saying. Does that not scream to you that that is a child of Irving Grousbeck that can't wait for their 90-year-old father to die so they can get some of the inheritance and are getting pissed at Wick for just pissing it all away on basketball? Like, I mean, honestly, you know, they are expected to lose roughly $80 million due to luxury tax fines for next season. And the season's about to tip off next month, you know? And of course, this whole thing, they say, quote, the Grousbeck family is selling the team for estate and family planning considerations. To say the sale is in any way related to losses is completely incorrect, which is what Wick said. But when you think about it, estate planning purposes is one and the same with what I was just mentioning. That the kids of the siblings of Wick are pissed because they want their inheritance. Wick wants to have a championship team and continue to win. So estate planning is, hey, let's get our money back. We've made X, like 20X, 100X on our original investment, maybe even 200X on our original investment. So let's get that money back. So that way, our father, who's 90 years old, when he croaks, we get our money, baby. That's right. It's all about money. It's all about the Benjamins to the Grousbeck family, except Wick. I mean, to me, that's what this article is saying. I don't know about you, but, you know, when you read between the lines, it's kind of interesting how the sources say, quote, dad. They don't go the father. They don't go Irv. They just say, you know, dad, because another quote from another source says, quote, Wick says we'll spend whatever it takes, but dad wasn't into losing money. While Irv, yes, might not be into losing money, guess who's not into losing money more than Irv? His kids. So it's just kind of crazy to me that, you know, here's an owner that in the whole Boston sports landscape, maybe even the whole sports landscape, who has done everything right. He has spent money right. He said the right things. He did the right things. This Wick Grousbeck is the owner that every single fan base should get for their team. That's Wick Grousbeck. But unfortunately, the dude didn't have the money. It was his father. And because he was trying to do right, not only by himself, but by the fan base, they're going to piss it all away. Because the family's too damn cheap. It's crazy to me. It sucks. It's what it is. Because in a landscape, in a market that we hate John Henry with a burning passion. Robert Kraft pissed us off for everything that he has done post Bill Belichick. And then Jeremy Jacobs had a troubled history with spending money, but then when the salary cap became a dead cap, a real cap, the Bruins have spent basically up to that cap every single time. So it's not the worst thing in the world. Like Jeremy Jacobs had that reputation of not spending money, but then when the salary cap became real, that's when the Bruins finally started to spend money. So he's kind of flown under the radar recently. But Wick, man, Wick was the guy. Wick was beloved. And yet the family sucks. Let's put it that way. The family's too damn cheap. And they don't understand a good thing when they had it. So, man, what a comeback. What an opening first show. We got a lot going on. It's football season. Patriots season is, here. We're going to be going through every single game. We're going to have some new tidbits to the Boston Sports Summit coming up down the road. So stay tuned for those. Please don't forget to like, share, subscribe, comment down below. Tell me what you liked. Tell me what you didn't like. Did you agree? Did you disagree? Did you think that Wick sucked as an owner? Do you think that the Pats are going to surprise us and win more than 4.5 games? Let me know in the comments below. Also, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe down below. We got Boston Sports Summit on Instagram. We have Boss Sports Summit, BOS Sports Summit on X. Otherwise, and we're always here every Wednesday, 7 p.m. on, where is it? Right there, on the Grid Network. So stay tuned. A lot more coming at you this fall. Very excited. It's going to be an awesome time. For your host, I am your host, Tim Barnard, for the Boston Sports Summit presented by the Grid Network. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll catch you guys next week. See you then. God bless.